back. Let's go to our next fireside chat here at Sustainability Live D&I. And it's my pleasure to introduce Stuart Branch, Executive Board Director at the Weetabix food company. And we're talking building a stronger and fairer culture, Weetabix initiatives in the workplace. Hi Stuart, how are you?
Good morning, very well, thank you. Very well indeed.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, we've got a lot to cover off, so let's crack into it if we can. And I always find it fascinating actually really digging in to the different strategies being employed at different organisations, because everyone's trying to get to the same place, but it doesn't mean you have to go about it in the same way. So let's start with talent if we can. What are the main initiatives at Weetabix you've introduced to really nurture and support talent within the company? Which are the ones are you most proud of?
We, like many businesses, been working on our talent attraction, talent development, succession planning, talent retention strategies for some time. And we've been running a kind of internal process to support that for a number of years. And I think we've built a really, really successful kind of track record of largely promoting from within. Giving people the skills, competencies, capabilities, buckets of experience that they need to develop through the organisation. But probably something I'm most proud of that we've done most recently is actually around the investment in an early careers role. So about 18 months or so ago, invested in a new headcount in the organisation and brought somebody in to manage our apprenticeship program, but also develop beyond the apprenticeship program, reinvigorating our graduate program that we have done on and off for many years, but haven't paid a lot of attention to in the last kind of 5 or 10 years. So reinvigorating that. And then also reaching out to schools, reaching out and recognizing that we have a duty within the community, an opportunity, a privilege within the community to shape the skills, competencies and capabilities that we need in the business. And so reach out into those career teams in schools and help people understand what careers at Weetabix can and do look like.
Now, you've given me so many things to run off from that particular answer. I'm going to talk to you about progression in just a second, so if I don't, remind me. The other thing I wanted to say is about clearly there is revision, there is analysis of these kind of strategies, not just setting up a strategy saying, right, we've got that nailed, let's carry on with this for the next 15 years. How important do you feel is it to continuously review these strategies and these approaches? Because clearly you've reviewed them and thought, right, let's reinvigorate that. Let's take a fresh look at that. How critical is it to do that? And also being quite honest with yourself whilst doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. I think my team and several people in the business would maybe challenge me for not celebrating our successes enough, rather than not continuously challenge the results that we've got today, and are they good enough, and how can they and should they be better? I've probably worked for all of my career in organisations that have a culture around continuous improvement, whether that be cost or career development or sales, innovation and product development. And that's probably no less at Weetabix than anywhere I've been. We have kind of 4 values in our organisation that are linked to our strategy and our vision and what have you. And one of those is driving improvement. So, embedded into our performance appraisal process in the organisation is drive improvement. As a manufacturing organisation, many manufacturing organisations have this kind of continuous improvement, Kaizen, Lean, Six Sigma approaches in the organisation. We don't have those hard and fast through a lot of our commercial and support functions, but that capability and that mindset is definitely there. So you're absolutely right. Some of our learning and development, some of our talent development has been in place for 5, 6, 7 years, and we do have to revisit it all the time. We have to question and challenge ourselves whether the data points are proving progress on the journey that we want to get to. I also think it's now more than ever, or now as much so as ever, is this leadership behavior in the business, that you've got to listen to your teams, you've got to listen to your people. When you bring new people in, they come in with fresh ideas. So we have to make sure that we're listening to those fresh ideas coming in, and questioning and trying new things all the time.
One thing I love about our sustainability events is because they're so broad. I know, say at Sustainability Live London a couple of months ago, I'm crossing the networking floor, and you've got a manufacturer talking to a fintech, who's talking to an energy company, who's talking to someone who makes breakfast cereals. You get all these different areas, and they're all learning from each other. So let's just go back to the idea of that continuous development, and the honesty and humility that's required to do that, because frankly, sometimes you're admitting we could be doing this better, which isn't always easy in leadership. What advice would you have for others about maintaining that continuous improvement in this area?
It's a bit cliche, isn't it, to suggest that people should be attending events like today and learning from others in other organisations. But I think it's something that we do practice at Weetabix. I myself was at the Grocery Aid, the DIG event, Diversity in Grocery, in London 3, 4, 5 weeks ago now, and you just never fail to be inspired. You see the work that other organisations are doing. I always attend those events with an open mindset. I don't know what is the gem of an idea that I'm going to come away with, but I go believing that there will be one. And I'd really encourage organisations to network within their industry, where they can network across and outside of their industry. But again, we're big believers at Weetabix of be your best, not be the best. So how do you really contextualize what other people are doing, and think about what are the real opportunities for you with your context, with your industry, with your challenges at the moment, and look at it from that perspective.
Something I did say that I'd come back to. How at Weetabix do you ensure fair career progression for all employees? Because the fairness of that progression is crucial.
Yeah, I think we're a brilliant business in this regard. I think our stats talk for themselves. I think when you look at things like our gender pay gap, when you look at the number of senior leaders that we are growing in the organisation, from certainly from a gender point of view, and we are and have started to focus on other characteristics of diversity beyond gender, but gender is definitely the bigger focus for us. But I think those kind of stats prove that we are doing some of the right things and continuing to work on it. I think we have some brilliant policies, processes and practices. But if I link back to your previous question and comment, one of the things that we started to do 10 years ago or more, one of the things that we still do today, and I was talking to my team about this just this week, is correlating our data. Looking at what are the end of year performance ratings, look at what are the succession ratings, look at the number of people that we've got that we're investing our learning and development money into. Dig into some of those data points and then start correlating them. Have a look where we might have some correlations that paint an unpleasant picture, that if that got into the external environment, we wouldn't be proud of. How do we notice and pay attention to some of those things, and question whether we've got any kind of unconscious bias going on? I'm really confident that we don't have any conscious bias. I'm really confident that we have a brilliant intent, but lots of organisations have a good intent, and their impact felt versus impact intended isn't always the same thing. So we try and look at data points to give us that correlation and address where we might have some unconscious practice happening.
Stu, we have a flood of questions coming in, so I'm going to start going to those rather than being deeply selfish and using all my own questions. So let's go to the iPad and pick out a couple. Let's go to Namisha. Hi, Namisha. They'd love to know some top tips for the business case for the approach of creating a headcount to focus on the development of driving young recruitment. What was the business case that was put across? I'm sure it's been pretty strong.
Yes, it has. For that particular role, it was very much about the effectiveness of managing our apprenticeship program. It was looking at our recruitment stats. It was looking at the roles that are hard to fill internally. It was looking at how much we spend on recruitment firms, probably not at the headhunter level, but certainly on the contingency recruitment, and believing that we can create some of our own succession planning in particular roles in the organisation, to remove that need to go external all the time, to kind of bring more talent through the organisation. For a number of years, our apprenticeship programme has only been focused on manufacturing, management and engineering. And the reason for that is they are the two kind of critical areas in the organisation that we struggle to recruit and get the best talent and provide that kind of succession planning in the business.
Let's move on
whereas we've had a number of teams, a number of functions that have wanted an apprentice in their organisation, we've said if we're going to, manage X number of apprentices or make sure that our quality versus quantity is pitched at the right level, we need to put our effort into the most critical roles in the organisation. That said, we have, as I said, with the new role that we've expanded, we've certainly taken apprentices into a couple of other functions, and we have expanded our graduate training programme in partnership with an organisation called MDS at the same time, which is proving very successful for us.
The number of questions I'm getting in right now, it's a flood is probably the only word I've got for it. So if we can try and keep the answers as punchy as possible, I'd be very, very grateful, so we can get through as many as possible. Let's go to Camille Bertrand. How do you manage the orientation for new employees and from the beginning about your company's DE&I policy? How do you go about that?
We have a very structured induction program. It includes for every single employee joining the business a 2-day induction. That goes everything from health and safety at work through to IT policies, including into things like our DE&I strategy. So that's the formal side. We have an intranet in the organisation that has an abundance of materials on it. And then we have a voluntary group that runs our DE&I strategy called Inclusion Without Exception at Weetabix.
Next question. This is the one that's been upvoted the most by the audience, so we'll go to this one next. I will be entirely democratic with this. How do you ensure that collecting the data doesn't take more effort than the initiatives that they're delivering?
I'm not too sure. We've struggled on that much, if I'm honest. We may not yet have got into some of the most difficult areas, like disability or ethnicity, where those requirements are not there for an organisation to have to obtain from employees. With gender, it's so much easier. Everyone does fill out their gender on kind of application forms and their employment status thereafter. The data that we've got around who's done training, who's listed as a successor in the organisation is a standard process. So sorry to avoid the question, but I'm not too sure we've really struggled on effort versus reward. I think the reward's been there over and above the effort required all of the time.
I will take that as a positive answer then. It's often good when that's not a problem. Let's go to Sunny next. How do you promote diversity within the organisation? Do you have network groups set up, maybe through the intranet? What activities take place within the organisation to promote those kind of things?
Yeah, sure. The Inclusion Without Exception is a strategy and a team of volunteers in the organisation that I would suggest almost everybody at Weetabix knows about. They know about them because we run a number of sessions through the Inclusion Without Exception group. We run activities in the organisation like breakfast with. Some time ago, they used to be literally you had breakfast and you had a presentation from somebody in our restaurant. During COVID, they went much more online via Microsoft Teams. And today we've continued with the Microsoft Teams, but we have a number of events that are chaired and facilitated through those groups with other volunteers coming in. The most recent one is a Parents at Weetabix group that are trying to share the learnings and the experiences of parents coming back to work for the first time, coming back to work for the second or third time, but bringing in people like sleep experts that just help people recognise the challenges that every parent has of the child's sleep and quite often of their own sleep as well. So lots of activities that are run.
That's something I'm absolutely taking on board and going to try and implement here. A sleep expert popping into the office, that'd be amazing. Next question regards suppliers, about how your D&I policy may apply to them, and how do you ensure they're complying and doing the things that you'd like them to be doing? How does that look from the outside in, or sorry, from the inside out?
Yeah, it's something that we've probably followed the lead from our customers from. So, being a supplier to many of the major retailers and a number of other businesses across the UK, we get audited to our supplier standards. They are far and wide, but they include ethical audits. And where appropriate, we take that through our supply chain. Things like the requirement to know your supply chain and to know that you've got kind of ethical practice happening all the way through your supply chain. There are legislation and requirements like that give us a kind of framework to work from. But we're not terribly heavy-handed, if I'm honest. We have not followed some of the pattern that we've seen in the US. About really kind of delving into the diversity and inclusion requirements of suppliers. We've taken a softer and slightly more of a wait and see approach in the UK to see how that kind of manifests itself. And I think our supply chain and our procurement team have excellent standards that have been in place for a really long time.
We are nearly out of time, I'm afraid, Stuart, so I'm going to finish with what I freely admit is a completely impossible question. So take that as you will. When it comes to culture, all of these programs, all of these strategies come together to create an overall culture at an organisation. For you, what is the secret, if there is one, of getting that culture right? Because one culture can get it put in place and feel a little off, not quite right, a bit like Big Brother, and then a culture in another business can feel part of the fabric of the business and part of the family, if you will. What's the secret of trying to get that culture right for you?
I'd say a couple of things. You're right. There is no answer for everybody. I would say one of the things that I feel most proud about at Weetabix, and it has been true at Weetabix years, decades before I joined, but we have a saying at Weetabix around doing the right thing even when no one's looking. And I think that is such a credit to our culture in the organisation. I don't know who to attribute it to. I don't know whether it manifested itself through the organisation or it was a strategy from my predecessor. But at its worst, it allows us to hide our light under a bushel a little bit because we're not the most public organisation about all of the good stuff that we do. But there is a real sense of doing the right thing even when no one is looking at Weetabix. So that's one of it for me. The second I'd link back to the leadership behaviour, whether you call it growth mindset or continuous improvement. I think it's about that belief that we can constantly learn, that we're not the finished article, and if we listen to our customers, our suppliers, and especially our colleagues, then we can continue to make it a great place to work as the context moves on.
I think that's as close to a perfect answer to an impossible question that I've ever heard. One final thing, your background has made me deeply hungry, which is kind of unfair because I've still got a half-an-hour panel to present after this before the networking break. So damn you for that. I'm going to have to hang on a little bit longer before I have my
any which way, Weetabix. Any which way you want it, you can have it.
I'll save that for my networking break. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us. Really enjoyed your company today.
Thank you very much indeed.